There are 1,000 archaeological artifacts in the world that might strike you as impressive when you look at them, but there are far fewer that make you stand back and say, "That's amazing." The number of those amazing artifacts that also comes with a surprise or mysterious backstory is even fewer. Only a very select number of special artifacts match that description, but we've hunted them all down for you and put them together in this video. Placing so-called witch bottles inside the walls or chimneys of their homes was a curious habit of 19th century English homeowners. It's long been believed that the often macabre or disgusting contents of these bottles were specifically chosen to ward off witches or evil spirits. In November 2019, a research team suggested that the bottles may also have had a semi-medical purpose. This bottle was discovered that month in the chimney of a former pub in Watford and contains fish hooks, broken glass, human teeth, and an unidentified liquid that's probably urine. The 19th century owners of the pub would have been especially keen to drive away witches because the property is known for being the birthplace of Angeline Tubbs, later known as the Witch of Saratoga in 1761. According to Geoff Manough, who writes for The New Yorker, witch bottles were also sometimes thought to act as curatives, guarding the health and longevity of the people who lived in a home. We're not sure how a bottle of old teeth and urine would help you live longer. In fact, if you drank it, we suspect it would do the opposite. Speaking of objects with magical properties, this Sorceress's kit was discovered in the ruins of Pompeii in Italy in August 2019. The box that once contained the items was wooden and had long since rotted away, but the hinges were still there, and so were all the contents. There are over 100 items in the hall, which comes from a part of Pompeii known to archaeologists as Reggio 5. The most curious artifacts among the collection are probably the little buttons, which are made from human bones. We also have stones carved into skull shapes, tiny dolls, scarab beetles, and crude miniature sculptures of genitalia. All of them look exactly as they would have done when the box was sealed prior to the catastrophic eruption of Mount Vesuvius in the year 79. The lack of valuables like gold or jewelry in the box suggests that it belonged to someone poor, perhaps even a slave, who either relied on the items in fortune-telling or performed rituals with them aimed at improving their fortunes. If their owner perished when the volcano erupted, we guess the spellcasting did them no good. Here's a discovery that came to light in Scotland in late 2019 and has had archaeologists scratching their heads ever since. It's a hollowed-out whale vertebra that was found on the cairns in the Scottish Orkney Islands. A whalebone wouldn't necessarily be of interest to an archaeologist, but this one was found to contain the remains of 2 newborn lambs, plus 1 human jawbone. It seems that the whalebone was used for storage. Experts think that the unorthodox container dates back to the 2nd century, and that it was once placed close to the entrance of a roundhouse, where it was beneath a large grinding stone. This might indicate that the early Iron Age residents of the Orkney Islands deliberately hunted whales, although it's probably more likely that a dead one washed up on the beach, and the residents made use of the carcass as best they could. As for why 2 lambs and a human jawbone would end up in a whalebone pot, nobody has any idea. It's something that archaeologists have never seen before or since. If mainstream archaeologists can't find a good explanation for an apparently ancient artifact, they sometimes try to ignore or discredit them. These Mexican artifacts fall into that category. They're a range of metallic objects, some small, some large, that have cropped up all over the country in discoveries that date back to the early 20th century. Some of them are doubtless fakes, made by people hoping to capitalize on the popularity of the originals, but not all of them can be written off so easily. For a start, many of them are kept by their finders rather than being sold, so there's no attempt to make money from them. That's the whole point of a hoax. The wide range of objects includes plates and figurines that appear to have non-human features. That tends to get UFO enthusiasts excited, but they could just as easily be representations of ancient gods or symbolic representations of something we don't understand. There are hundreds of artifacts, many of which bear inscriptions that have never been deciphered, that could and should be accepted and studied by professional archaeologists and academics. The fact that they're being ignored is as arrogant as it is frustrating. There have been as many archaeological discoveries in Egypt in the past 10 years as there were in the century that went before, but few of them are as exciting as this one. It's a pharaonic solar boat that was found in Abu Rawesh near Cairo in July 2012, and the archaeologists responsible for the discovery believe it to be around 5,000 years old. This takes it back to the time of Pharaoh Den, one of the very first kings of Egypt's first dynasty. The boat, which is 20 feet long and 4 feet wide, is in remarkably good condition for something so old. Perhaps that isn't surprising though. After all, it's never once sailed on water. That wasn't the point of solar boats. Instead, they were designed to transport the souls of the dead to the afterlife. Most Egyptian pharaohs had one made as part of their burial, including the great Pharaoh Khufu. His 40-meter-long solar ship was found inside the Great Pyramid of Giza in 1954 and is about 4,500 years old. The size of the solar barge might be connected to the perceived importance of the pharaoh, but we don't have enough surviving examples of them to prove that. The concept of a burial mound was familiar to almost every culture and civilization of ancient Europe, but we use different words to describe the mounds in different places. If we're talking about a burial mound within former Danubian Europe, the correct word is kurgan. Here's a kurgan that was discovered in Poland in March 2021. Archaeologists say that it's around 2,000 years old and contains the remains of a community of female weavers. The women were buried directly on top of each other, surrounded by their spindle whorls and distaffs. It's likely that they belonged to the wheelbark culture, which once lived in the Sarbia forestry district where the kurgan was found. Rather than being a mass grave where people were thrown carelessly into the ground, these women were buried with respect. They wore their best robes and went to their graves with glass, amber, and bone beads, as well as pendant necklaces. Quite why the women were buried in a pile is a question that experts can't answer. It's unlikely that they all died at the same time, so perhaps this mound was designated for people of their profession. There's something a little unusual about this collection of standing stones in St. Leonard, Switzerland. The stones, known as menhirs, are arranged in a straight line. This is highly irregular for stone monuments of the Neolithic era. When people made stone monuments back then, and by then we mean about 4,500 years ago, they almost always arranged the stones in circular formations or in rows. These menhirs are standing in a straight line, almost as if they're queuing for something. The straight line of standing stones was discovered in August 2021, but archaeologists unfortunately won't get long to study them in their original location. The ground was only excavated because of a construction project that's scheduled for the area, and the construction project is still going ahead. The stones will have to be extracted and moved if experts want to study them further. And the act of moving them might rob us of any chance of finding out why they were lined up like this in the first place. Does this small clay tablet contain the oldest known example of applied geometry in the world? The archaeologist who rediscovered it in April 2021 certainly thinks so. And so does the mathematician he took it to for verification. The tablet is around 3,700 years old, but for the past 100 years, it's been in storage in a museum in Istanbul, Turkey. It's thought to have been found in Iraq during the 19th century, but was considered so unimportant that it was kept in a part of the museum that wasn't accessible to the public. That perception has now changed. Dr. Daniel Mansfield from the UNSW Sciences School of Mathematics and Statistics says that it's the only example of what's known as a cadastral document from the Old Babylonian era. The tablet would have been used by ancient surveyors to define and record land boundaries, and they used applied geometry when doing so. The calculation recorded on the tablet includes a Pythagorean triple, which creates a perfect right angle. This remarkable discovery makes a mockery of the name. We call them Pythagorean triples because we think he invented them. But this tablet was made about 1,000 years before Pythagoras was born. A long-standing archaeological excavation project in China's Shandong province bore fruit in August 2021, when this collection of Yuan dynasty tombs was unearthed. The cluster of 12 tombs, all of which are around 800 years old, comes complete with impressive carved brick murals. All of the tombs feature murals, but only one of them comes with a stone chamber. This suggests that the tomb with a chamber belonged to someone of great social importance. Making the murals would have taken a very long time, which implies that whoever had these tombs built did so long before their death. The process of cracking and patterning the brickwork would have been carried out using wooden hammers and chisels, and any small mistake would have meant having to throw away the brick and starting again. This is the largest collection of Yuan dynasty tombs ever found in the region, and archaeologists believe that it was made for the Guo family. Their name repeatedly appears on the murals, but sadly there's no information about who they were or what they achieved in life that would afford them such a lavish set of burials. We're off back to Egypt now, where this Greco-Roman pottery workshop was discovered in July 2021. It's an enormous and complex site, and shows signs of being in continual use for hundreds of years, starting in the early dynastic period. The workshop was found at the archaeological site of Tel Qom Aziza, Abu Humus. The oldest of the ceramic fragments found here is about 2,300 years old, with the most recent coming from the 1st century. Clearly visible at the site are the formation area and drying area, along with the outlines of the ovens. Archaeologists have been able to find and identify parts of the pottery wheel. The workshop appears to have been at the heart of a community that once existed here. Researchers were able to find the outlines of old mud brick houses with domestic cooking ovens and even a few human burials in the land around these former homes. It's likely that the workshop and the settlement were both abandoned during the Roman era, but the reasons why will probably never be known. What is clear is that when these people left, they did it so quickly that unprocessed clay was left behind in the workshop. When Spanish conquistadors reached the Huayzompantil Tower in the Aztec capital city of Tenochtitlan, they destroyed it on sight. It terrified them, and it's not hard to see why. The tower was made out of human skulls, and a Spanish soldier and writer of the time claims to have calculated that there were over 100,000 of them in the tower. In December 2020, we found out that the Spanish destruction effort wasn't as thorough as they must have thought it was, because the remains of the tower still exist. It extended beneath the ground from its visible location, and thus far, experts have been able to identify 603 different skulls in what's left of it. They're still stacked on top of each other in their original tower formation, and bound by the same mortar that glued them together 500 years ago. Legends say that the Aztecs maintained several towers like this. They called them Zompantli, which loosely translates as skull racks. What's horrified archaeologists the most is that they were expecting to find that the skulls belonged only to adult men. But the collection of 603 includes women and young children. It seems nobody was safe. Here's a story about Spanish history that doesn't involve mass murder. In February 2020, Archaeologists confirmed the discovery of this so-called shrine deep inside a Cova de la Font Major in Catalonia. The description of it as a shrine would suggest some kind of worship activity went on in here, which can't be proven, but we can at least call it an ancient art gallery. There are paintings of horses, deer, bulls, and a series of abstract symbols inside the cave, all of which are said to have been created 15,000 years ago. What makes these paintings a little different to those you might find in other caves is that the designs were carved directly into the soft rock before being painted over. How the paintings evaded the attention of academics for such a long time is unknown. Tourists seem to have known about them because some of the art has sadly been damaged by human contact. The fact that humans once lived in these caves was detected for the first time in 1853, but perhaps we haven't been paying them enough attention since then. The abstract meaning of these symbols might never be known, but at least we're finally aware of them so we can attempt to decipher them. Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and enjoy watching new videos on my channel. Thanks for watching and see you soon!